Hello everyone, I am Dr. Aprajita Bhatt from National Law University, Delhi. The topic for today's discussion is online profiling. The learning objectives of this module are that you shall be able to understand the concept of online profiling, targeting and behavioral advertising. You shall also be able to understand the various challenges related to protecting individuals' privacy online. And we shall also discuss under this module various benefits and disadvantages of online profiling. The learning outcome of this module shall be that you would be able to understand the concept of online profiling, targeting, behavioral marketing with their pros and cons. The readers and the audience shall also be able to analyze the privacy concerns related to the online profiling mechanism. Now, as we all know that information technology or the IT revolution has brought in various kinds of innovations in our lives, and it has changed our lives altogether. Information technology is the most useful and beneficial technology of modern era. It has made our lives much more easier and much more faster. It is useful to all the sections of the society in all forms. By introducing and legitimizing e-commerce, e-contracts, e-communication, that is emails, it has made our lives much easier. Now, this information revolution or IT revolution is the next revolution after the agrarian revolution or agriculture revolution. It is a revolution of the modern times. After the agriculture revolution, as I said, the society changed from agriculture to industrial economy after the agriculture revolution, and now it has changed from industrial economy to knowledge economy after the internet revolution. But any major change doesn't come alone. It comes with both advantages as well as disadvantages. Although internet has brought with it various new forms of communication and transactions with the world, including e-commerce, emails, e-shopping, but there are certain attached disadvantages or demerits with every such technology. As we all know that the rapid growth of internet has created both positive as well as negative effects. It has now become more easy and it has become more easily possible to collect information as well as store that information, transfer that information, and also sell vast amount of personal data about the individuals who visit the websites. Such collection of personal data or such collection of personal information by companies from internet users is becoming a growing concern all over the world. Now, let us discuss and understand what is the meaning and concept of online profiling. Profiling generally means collecting and using pieces of information about individuals to make assumptions about them and their future behavior. Online profiling refers to a trend where an individual's profile created online, it is created online because of his internet usage, which shows his likes and his dislikes for products and services. It is primarily used by network advertising companies, popularly known as NACs, NACs, as a basis for targeting marketing. It is a method of creating a profile of a customer's browsing and buying habits by combining cookies and personal information about a customer. This entire process of creating profile online or online profiling, it includes and takes into account the time spent by a customer on a particular website and the interest which they show in a particular advertisement. In simple words, online profiling is the practice of tracking information about the consumer's interest by monitoring their movements online. Now, most of the online advertising is in the form of banner ads which are displayed on web pages such as Facebook, such as Orkut, and generally these ads are put on the website by a network advertising company or NAC. Such a network advertising company manages and provides advertisement for numerous unrelated websites. As a part of their work, it is a part of the work of NACs that they also gather data and collect information about the consumers, about the internet users who view their ads. This is made possible with the use of cookie, which tracks the individual's actions on the web. So the number of times the individual, the consumer or the internet user would visit the website, it will be tracked, and the data, the information will be stored in the cookie which is put by the network advertising company. The information gathered by a network advertising company is often anonymous. That is, the profiles are linked to the identification number of the advertising network's cookie on the consumer's computer rather than the name of a specific person. Once the consumer's data is collected, it is combined with other personal details of the consumer. These personal details are stored or gathered either on consumers' offline purchases, or information is collected directly from consumer through survey method or registration from the entire data. Now this entire data, the personal information, this is then analyzed by the team of network advertising companies, which enables them to make a variety of inferences about each consumer's interest, his preferences, his likes, his dislikes and his personal choices. It results in a detailed profile of the consumer that attempts to predict the consumer's taste, needs, purchasing habits, and enables the network advertising companies to make split-second decision about how to deliver ads directly targeted to the consumer's specific interest. As I mentioned before, that they make use of the cookies. So a cookie is placed by a network advertising company which can track a consumer on any website served by that company. Thereby it allows data collection across unrelated websites, unrelated sites on the web. The tracking of data occurs over an extended period of time. It resumes each time the individual logs on to the net. And to its surprise, all this is in most cases unknown to the customer. This is the customer, the internet user is not aware of all this happening. Now all that he knows is, and all that he sees is, the websites he visits. Banner ads appear as a seamless, integral part of web pages on which they appear, and cookies are placed without any notice to the consumer. Now certainly, as we discussed earlier, there are both merits and demerits, benefits, advantages as well as disadvantages of this entire concept of online profiling. So let us discuss what are the benefits of profiling and what are certain privacy concerns which are attached with this concept of online profiling. The network advertising companies' use of cookies and other technology to create targeted marketing programs, it can benefit both customers as well as the businesses. Let us discuss how can they benefit customers and businesses. In case of customers, targeted advertisements, they allow the consumers to receive offers and information about goods and services in which they are interested. It saves on their time and it also saves their resources. And how does it benefit the businesses? In case of businesses, they are benefited from the ability to target advertising because they avoid wasting advertising money, marketing themselves to those consumers who have no interest in their products. So if an internet user is using Facebook, he is using any of the social networking site, he would be shown only those advertisements in which he is interested by virtue of the fact that his online profile has been created by network advertising companies. But along with the benefits which are available both to consumers as well as businesses, there is also a concern about the online profiling practice. That is, mainly the concern is the privacy issue. It is conducted without consumers' knowledge. This is the biggest concern. The presence and identity of the network advertising company on a particular website, the placement of a cookie on the consumer's computer, the tracking and monitoring of customers or consumers' movements, and the targeting of ads to them. All these are invisible in most cases, and this is the biggest concern across the globe today. Another important concern is the extensive and sustained scope of monitoring that occurs. It's not only that cookies are placed and information is collected, but his movements, the customer's movements are also monitored all the time. Advertising network companies, they monitor individuals across a multitude of seemingly unrelated websites and over an indefinite period of time. Now that we know that the network advertising companies place cookies on their computer to track the movements of the customers and to collect information and data about the internet users, we should also know that how are cookies used. And after all, what is a cookie? Cookies are nothing but they are small text files, usually less than 1 kilobyte in size. They reside on the local hard disk of the computer or terminal equipment of a user, and they contain a limited amount of profile information about that user. Cookies serve like an identifier connecting to the computer where the information has been deposited. Now, how are they used? It's very common that cookies are used these days in a very common manner, and they are used on mostly all business to consumer, that is B2C consumer e-commerce websites such as Amazon, such as eBay, etc. And on browsing such a website, the personal information about the internet user is collected. Personal information such as what pages the user is viewing, what search items the user is typing in, what images the user is clicking on, and what items the user selects, and finally what items is he saving. All this personal information is tracked by the cookie and stored. Now, all such information is connected to the user on every subsequent repeated visit which the user makes to that website. The cookie, which acts as an identifier in this entire process, is put on the system of the network advertising company. Cookies have been used for both good, for legitimate purposes, as well as for malicious intentions. Now, cookies are of various kinds. There are persistent cookies, there are session cookies, and there is also another category known as third-party cookies. Persistent cookies differ from session cookies. They are used as a technical device to maintain continuity during one internet website browsing session. So, they are persistent in nature, they are continuous in nature, and they are there to maintain continuity during the entire browsing session. Cookies which are of persistent nature, they are quite useful for the users as they are not deleted at the end of the website session. They remain there on the hard disk of the user always. Persistent cookies have their own advantages, such as it enables the sites to know who the user is, what are his interests. The user need not to log in every time he uses the computer or uses the internet. The data and information such as delivery address, such as credit card details, they can usefully be remembered and filled in automatically for the user. So, these are certain obvious advantages of a persistent cookie. Unlike the persistent cookie, there are session cookies which are deleted at the end of every session. They are deleted at the end of the visit to a particular website. They also normally do not involve the processing of personal data or any possible invasion of personal property. Other than these two forms of cookies, there is another category which is quite new, the third-party cookie. Now, what is meant by third-party cookie? Third-party cookies, they are considered to be a threat to the privacy of internet users. For example, web advertising companies such as DoubleClick, they have introduced and used such third-party cookies, and they have expanded the concept of knowing the user, understanding the user, and collecting information about the user or the customer. For example, if the user serves amazon.co.uk, Amazon deposits or puts a cookie on the computer so that it can remember what the user did, what the user served, and finally what did he buy. Now, this is all known as a second party cookie because this is between Amazon, one party, and the internet user, another party. So, this is quite safe. However, if DoubleClick strikes a deal with Amazon, in this case, in this example, it strikes a deal with Amazon and it becomes advertising partner with Amazon. Now, when the user serves Amazon, not only is an Amazon cookie deposited, but also a DoubleClick cookie, which is a third party cookie, that is also deposited on the computer. This way, a third party, which in this example is DoubleClick, it would learn about the user, his choices, his preferences, his likes, his dislikes, everything, his purchasing habits, whenever he visits not only Amazon but also other online bookstores. So, this is the entire concept of third party cookie. Although in such a case, in the case of a third party cookie, such multi-site information provides better profiling of the overall activity of a user, and it opens up the possibility of serving more relevant targeted ads. Cookies, after understanding their meaning and concept, we know that these days they have become a matter of concern, and if we go back to the history of cookie, this entire concern was debated over during the EC Electronic Commerce Directive, that is ECD, when it was realized that the personal information about consumers browsing the internet was being collected using second and third party cookies. Now, usually this is all done without the consent, without the knowledge of the consumer. So, this is done without his explicit consent or knowledge. The European Parliament proposed the total banning of cookies without the prior consent, and they were first regulated in the UK in Privacy and Electronic Communication Directive PECD in the year 2002. So, the PECD introduced the requirement of putting a ban on the use of cookie without prior consent in its Article 5 Clause 3 on confidentiality of communications, that cookies might only be set if the consumer was supplied with clear and comprehensive information about the purposes of processing and is offered the right to refuse such processing by the data controller. Now, let us also understand what is the role of network advertising companies and how do they work, the NSCs. Now, most of the ads which are received by the users on the web pages, they are customized ads. Now, they are based on the predictions about the browsing habits of the user each time the user visits the website. Such an ad customization is called online behavioral or internet-based advertising. The user can either opt in or he is also allowed to opt out in some cases. Now, what is the meaning of opt in and opt out? If he opts for opt out option, the network advertising company ceases to collect and use the data from across web domains which are owned or operated by different entities for the purpose of delivering advertising based on preferences or interest. Now, this is all the concept of internet based advertising or behavioral advertising, because such an advertising or such advertisements, they are targeted to the internet users based on their behavior, based on their habits, based on their likes and dislikes. Opting out here means that the company or companies from which the user opted out will no longer deliver the ads which are tailored to the web preferences or browsing habits of the user, but of course, the customer or the consumer will continue to receive online advertising. So, we need to understand clearly as to what is the concept of behavioral advertising. Online profiling is directly related to online advertising. This is known by different names by different people. Some of them call it behavioral advertising or some of them call it internet-based advertising. Such advertising or its variations, they are demographically targeted or they are location based. The reason behind it named as behavioral advertising is that it consists of tracking customers or consumers' online activities or online behavior over a period of time in order to deliver advertisement that are targeted to the inferred interest. The behavioral advertisers, they use this data to build the profile of the internet user, and it determines their preferences, their likes, it displays advertisements based on their preferences, demographics and also their interest. Now, there are certain important players which are involved in this entire game of online profiling. The three main important players in this concept of online profiling are the website, the advertisers and the ad networks or network advertising company. Now, all the three main players, they play a very important role, a very important part in this entire mechanism. The reason is the websites need money to operate. The advertisers, they need to sell their products or goods to the internet users, and the ad networks, they help deliver advertisement to a targeted audience. Now, there are certain advantages of behavioral advertising. One of a very important advantage is that advertising, as we all know, is a very important source of revenue for websites. It also recommends various products and services to the users according to his liking, which saves the time and the resources of the user to go out for shopping and to choose his goods and services of his preference. It has helped so far to establish a huge online market. As we know, the concept of e-commerce has turned into a huge concept. So it has helped establish a huge online market which benefits all the three players. Other than the benefits or advantages which are involved with behavioral advertising, there are certain risks and there are certain concerns also which are involved in this concept. The concept of behavioral advertising, it leads to consumer tracking and gives rise to privacy issues. Also, such practices like putting of cookie on the computer, storing and collecting information about the internet user every time when he logs on to the computer or internet, such practices threatens the individual's ability to control the flow of his personal information. And it is believed that in few cases individuals only tolerate advertising rather than enjoying it. There are certain other attached risks also, such as the use of potentially inaccurate data which affects the image of the user. There is always a potential threat that the data can be inaccurate and that creates a wrong image about the user. Similarly, profiling may be used to discriminate against individual users through differing pricing schemes. The advertising company may offer same product to different individuals, to different consumers at different prices depending on the fact whether they are wealthy or not. There are surveys which show that consumers are not comfortable with such profiling. Now, after having discussed and after having understood the concept of cookies and the meaning of cookies, let us also discuss and understand as to what are the benefits of cookies. Cookies are used for many purposes other than profiling by third-party advertisers. Websites, they often ask for usernames, they ask for user passwords when purchases are made, when online purchasing or online shopping is done, or before some content is provided. Cookies can store these names, these passwords and such information so that consumers do not need to sign in each time whenever they visit the site. They also allow a website to remember what is in a consumer's shopping cart from prior visits. So this saves time of the consumer, of the internet user. Cookies can also be used by websites to offer personalized home pages or other customized account or other customized content with local news and weather with other material of interest to individual consumer. Individual online merchants, they can use cookies to track consumers' purchases in order to offer recommendations about new products, about new services that may be of interest to their established customers. And by enabling businesses to monitor traffic on the websites, cookies allow business to constantly revise the design, the layout of the sites to make them more interesting, to make them appear more appealing to the internet users, to the consumers. But along with these benefits, there are certain concerns which are involved with the use of cookie. The presence and identity of network advertisers on a particular site, the placement of a cookie on the consumer's computer, the tracking of customers' movements and targeting of ads, they are all invisible in most cases, as we discussed before. Many people object to the network advertisers' hidden monitoring of consumers and collection of extensive personal data without the knowledge of the customer or without the knowledge of the internet user. Consumers, they are offered few choices about the use, about the dissemination of their individual information obtained in this manner. Another concern is, which is very important, that there is extensive scope of monitoring that occurs. Companies could use profiles to determine the prices as discussed earlier. They use these cookies and use the online profile to decide and determine prices and terms upon which goods and services can be offered to individual internet users. Products might be offered at higher prices to some consumers whose profile indicate that they are wealthy, they are rich. Also, it can happen that insurance may be offered at higher prices to consumers whose profile indicates possible health risk. Therefore, this entire practice of differing price variation, offering goods and services to consumers or internet users at different prices, this is known as the concept of web lining. Web lining occurs as a direct result of data profiling, which aggregates a rich series of personal internet-based information to determine who you are. Web lining is an important issue in the present times as it allows invasion of our privacy. There are conflicting situations in laws across different countries, different nations, which make it difficult to resolve this issue. The solution only lies somewhere between probably the government, the industry and the individual. Efforts are required to be made to raise the level of internet privacy so that people are not refrained from using internet freely. After having discussed the concept meaning of cookies, online profiling, behavioral advertising or targeted advertising and also the web lining, we should analyze whether online profiling or creation of such a profile is a harmful practice. Now, this is a very common trend these days, a very popular trend these days, all those who use internet, that their profile is created online. This has been considered to be a harmful practice by many thinkers as it counters the traditional notions of privacy and data protection. Privacy, as we all understand and as it was understood in general, it includes some measure of control over personal information and which is being infringed, which is being threatened in case of online profiling. Another disadvantage of online profiling is that it limits the options available to the users. His choice gets limited by his behavioral pattern. It may also take the form of variable pricing, wherein a user's past browsing history is reviewed by the sellers to adjust their prices. Another interesting observation is that there is no guarantee of accuracy in a consumer's profile. The reason is that when multiple people use the same computer which is being tracked, then the resulting profile may not be accurate. Such inaccuracies, they give rise to the probability of putting unrelated discriminatory advertisement on information gathered through profiling. Therefore, it also poses a challenge to the question of, to the issue of accuracy in case of data collection. So, in this module, we discussed the meaning, the concept of online profiling, how is it created, the concept of cookies and how are they used by the network advertising companies, what is the role of network advertising companies in the creation of online profile of an internet user. The legal issues involved in the creation of online profile is that it poses a threat to the privacy of an individual. Although there are certain inherent advantages, there are certain merits which are there in case of behavioral marketing, in case of online profiling. We conclude by saying that the entire concept and the area of online profiling is largely unregulated because we do not have many rules, regulations and legislations in this area. So, it is largely unregulated and therefore, there are inherent dangers which are involved in it. Users cannot effectively prevent online profiling as most of them are generally unaware of its presence. They do not know as to what protective or preventive measures they should take. There is also a need for a strong legislation to protect and empower consumers in the online world. Online profiling has a direct nexus with online privacy and data protection laws. Whereas it provides that the consumer with variety of purchasing or browsing habits or browsing options, it may create such a profile of the consumer which is different from the reality. Online profiling also poses a challenge to the data protection law and maintains online privacy. A basic level of privacy, a basic level of protection should be there, should be ensured to the web visitors, to the web users, and this is required to be established. The entire concept of online profiling, it gives rise to what is known as behavioral advertising or internet based advertising as we discussed. It is the marketplace where the seller, the advertiser who is also an intermediary and the end user who is the internet user, all three parties, all three main players are affected. But the concern is, and this is the main philosophy over which all the corporate laws are presently based, The philosophy is that corporate laws should be in the interest of the investor, it should be in the interest of the customer, in the interest of the shareholder. The same philosophy would be applied here, that consumers' interests should be considered of paramount importance. But the concern here is that consumers' rights and interests, they should not be adversely affected by this concept of online privacy, online profiling, and in this entire phenomena of market mechanism wherein the three main players have a major role to play, the consumers' interest should be not adversely affected, they should be secured and protected. Thank you.